Nobody planned this war. Nobody wanted this war. But here we are. American warships blockade Venezuelan ports. Venezuelan missiles threaten American bases. Oil prices hit $140 per barrel. 500,000 refugees flee across borders. Caracas is burning. Miami is preparing. China threatens intervention. Russia sends advisors. The whole thing started over oil contracts and escalated to the brink of World War III in 6 weeks. This is the war nobody wanted. The conflict that emerged from miscalculation, pride, and the fundamental incompatibility between Venezuelan sovereignty and American economic interests. Every party insisted they were defending legitimate rights. Every party is now trapped in conflict they cannot win and cannot afford to lose. This is how rational actors create irrational wars. This is USA versus Venezuela explained. The roots go back decades, but the immediate crisis began in July 2024. Venezuelan presidential election was blatantly fraudulent. Opposition candidate Maria Corina Machado won with 67%, according to exit polls and independent observers. Official results gave Nicolas Maduro 51%. International community denounced the fraud. Street protests erupted. Maduro's forces killed protesters. The violence crossed lines that even military officers could not ignore. What followed was inevitable. When governments lose legitimacy, someone eventually acts. In Venezuela's case, military officers acted. General Roberto Guzmán and 12 senior commanders organized coup. They controlled enough troops to succeed. The planning took 8 months. The execution took 14 minutes. Maduro was detained without casualties at 0327 hours on October 15th. The coup was clean. The aftermath was catastrophic. The junta promised democracy within 6 months. They promised to honor international commitments. They promised stability. They delivered none of this. Within 24 hours, pro-Maduro military units refused to recognize the new government. The 41st Armored Brigade, with 80 tanks and 3,000 troops, declared the coup illegal. Their commander, General Luis Torres, was true Maduro loyalist. He ordered advance on Caracas to restore constitutional order. Civil war began immediately. Pro-junta forces and pro-Maduro forces clashed in southern Caracas. 147 soldiers died in first engagement. Civilians fled or died in crossfire. The bloodless coup became bloody civil war in hours. What's your take on who's responsible? Type A if you blame Venezuela's government. Type B if you blame American interference. International reaction created the crisis that transformed civil war into great power confrontation. Cuba had 20,000 personnel in Venezuela. Doctors, teachers, intelligence advisors. Cuban investment in Maduro's regime was enormous. The coup threatened Cuban interests directly. More concerning, successful military coup in Venezuela might inspire similar action in Cuba. Havana could not allow this precedent. Cuban special forces deployed to Venezuela within hours. 150 tropas especiales arrived in Maracaibo and immediately linked up with pro-Maduro forces. Cuban tactical expertise significantly improved Venezuelan loyalist effectiveness. The civil war that junta thought they could win quickly became protracted stalemate. China's $60 billion investment in Venezuela drove Beijing's response. Chinese oil companies operated Venezuelan fields. Chinese military advisors trained Venezuelan forces. Chinese satellite ground stations provided navigation services. Chinese telecommunications infrastructure monitored the region. The coup threatened all of this. Worse, it set precedent. If military coups can remove Chinese-friendly governments without consequence, then Chinese investments worldwide become vulnerable. Beijing cannot accept this. Chinese Foreign Ministry issued statements condemning the coup. Chinese ambassador demanded Maduro's restoration. When diplomacy failed, China prepared military intervention. 2 Y-20 transport aircraft loaded with special forces departed for Venezuela. The mission was to tip balance toward Maduro loyalists. American military intercepted the aircraft 100 miles from Venezuelan coast. The Chinese planes turned back. China's first attempt at military intervention in Western Hemisphere ended in humiliation. Russia's role was more measured, but equally important. Moscow sold Venezuela $11 billion in weapons since 2005. Russian advisors trained Venezuelan forces. Russian oil companies operated in Venezuela. But Russia understood military coups and transitions better than China. Moscow issued diplomatic condemnations while quietly assessing whether new government could be worked with. Russia's calculation was pragmatic. If General Guzmán maintained commercial relationships, Russia might accept the transition. If he pivoted toward America, Russia would support counter-coup. This hedging strategy gave Russia options regardless of outcome. If you're enjoying this deep dive into modern warfare, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. America's response created the war nobody wanted. Washington policy for years was regime change in Venezuela. Sanctions aimed to create conditions for Maduro's removal. When the coup actually happened, policymakers faced dilemma. Supporting military junta contradicted American democratic values. But opposing the coup meant defending Maduro, which was politically impossible. State Department crafted ambiguous statement, noting the change while calling for rapid democratic transition. The statement bought time, but provided no actual policy. Events moved faster than diplomacy. The decisive moment came when General Guzmán requested American military assistance. His forces were losing ground to Cuban-supported Maduro loyalists. The 41st Brigade's tank advance threatened Presidential Palace. If junta fell, Guzmán faced execution for treason. His desperate request put America at decision point. Decline and watch junta collapse, meaning Maduro returns with Chinese and Cuban support. Intervene and become party to Venezuelan civil war. President chose limited intervention. FA-18. Super Hornets from USS George Washington struck 41st Brigade's armored column, 6 tanks destroyed. The advance stopped. American intervention achieved immediate tactical objective. But it also meant America was now combatant in Venezuelan civil war. That intervention triggered the escalation nobody wanted. Venezuelan nationalists saw American airstrikes as proof the coup was CIA operation all along. Popular support shifted toward resistance. Cuban forces dug in. Chinese advisors positioned themselves at critical installations as human shields. Russia increased weapons shipments. The Civil War became proxy conflict between great powers. What started as Venezuelan internal dispute became geopolitical crisis, threatening global stability. The oil dimension transformed everything. Venezuela holds 304 billion barrels of proven reserves. More than Saudi Arabia, more than any country on Earth. American oil companies had $14 billion in investments in Venezuela. When civil war erupted, Venezuelan government moved to protect national resources. At 300 hours on November 3rd, Venezuelan military seized all American oil facilities. ExxonMobil operations shut down. Chevron personnel detained. ConocoPhillips assets confiscated. The nationalization was comprehensive and coordinated. By 0400 hours, Venezuela controlled every American oil installation in the country. American response was swift and devastating. USS New Mexico submarine stationed off Venezuelan coast received orders to destroy Venezuelan Navy. The attack came at 1300 hours. 6 Mark 48 torpedoes fired in rapid succession. 2 Venezuelan frigates sank within minutes. 4 patrol boats were destroyed. 312 Venezuelan sailors died. In 8 minutes, Venezuela lost 70% of its naval combat power. American submarine assassination of Venezuelan fleet was militarily brilliant. It was also strategically disastrous. The attack confirmed Venezuelan narrative that America was aggressor. International condemnation was nearly universal. Even allies questioned proportionality of sinking entire navy over property dispute. Don't miss what comes next. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an analysis like this. Venezuela's economic retaliation exceeded military damage. All Venezuelan oil production stopped immediately, 700,000 barrels daily removed from global markets. Oil prices spiked from $83 to $140 per barrel in 3 weeks. That's largest sustained oil price increase since 1979. American consumers paid $6.20 per gallon for gasoline. Airlines canceled flights. Shipping costs soared. The economic damage to American economy exceeded $150 billion monthly. Venezuela could not defeat American military, but they could impose economic costs that made victory Pyrrhic. This was asymmetric warfare using economic weapons. It worked better than any military strategy could have. The humanitarian catastrophe emerged from the economic warfare. Venezuelan civilians suffered most. When oil production stopped, government revenue collapsed, food imports ceased, medicine became unavailable, electricity rationed to few hours daily, water systems failed, hospitals ran out of supplies. The suffering was immense. Within 4 weeks, 500,000 Venezuelans fled to Colombia, Brazil, and Caribbean nations. The refugee crisis destabilized entire region. Colombia couldn't absorb the influx. Brazil closed its border. Caribbean nations were overwhelmed. The humanitarian disaster created by the conflict exceeded any gain either side sought. Regional destabilization was an inevitable consequence. Colombian military crossed border to establish security buffer zone, 20 kilometers deep. Official explanation was preventing refugee chaos and securing abandoned Venezuelan military equipment. But Colombian forces in Venezuelan territory added international dimension. Brazil mobilized forces to northern border. Peru closed borders. Ecuador declared emergency. The Venezuelan crisis was metastasizing throughout South America. What started as internal Venezuelan matter became regional security threat. The nuclear shadow emerged when rhetoric escalated beyond control. Russian foreign minister mentioned Russia's nuclear capabilities in context of defending allies. The statement was vague. It was also terrifying. Nobody believes Russia would use nuclear weapons over Venezuela, but the mention alone reveals how dangerous the situation has become. When nuclear powers start invoking nuclear arsenals in regional conflicts, the risk of miscalculation becomes existential. This is how limited wars become unlimited disasters. What would you have done to prevent this escalation? Comment your answer below. The military stalemate is now entrenched. Junta controls northern Caracas and most of Venezuela. Pro-Maduro forces control southern Caracas districts, Maracaibo, and some eastern regions. Neither side can defeat the other militarily. Cuban advisors provide tactical expertise to loyalists. American air power supports junta. Russian weapons supply both sides depending on who pays. Chinese advisors remain positioned as human shields. The frozen conflict has developed. Neither side wins, both sides lose, civilians suffer. This is definition of strategic failure for everyone involved. The economic cost exceeds any rational calculation. America spends $4 billion monthly on military operations. Venezuelan economy has collapsed completely. Cuban economy suffers from supporting Venezuelan intervention. Chinese investments are worthless in war zone. Russian weapons sales profit, but diplomatic costs mount. Global economy pays $150 billion monthly in higher oil prices. The war is negative-sum game where everyone loses more than anyone could possibly gain. Yet it continues because stopping requires one side to accept loss. Pride prevents acceptance. Sunk costs demand continuation. This kind of detailed tactical breakdown takes hours to research. Subscribe to help us keep making them. The diplomatic isolation is comprehensive. United Nations cannot act because Security Council is deadlocked. Russia and China veto any resolution condemning Venezuela. America vetoes any resolution condemning intervention. The institutional architecture for managing international crises proves inadequate. Regional organizations are equally paralyzed. Organization of American States cannot agree on statement. ALBA bloc supports Venezuela. Pacific Alliance criticizes everyone. The diplomatic gridlock mirrors military stalemate. Nobody can impose solution. Nobody will accept compromise. The domestic politics in all countries prevent de-escalation. In America, president faces criticism from both sides. Republicans demand more aggressive action to secure oil. Democrats demand withdrawal from unnecessary war. Approval ratings collapse. In Venezuela, junta cannot negotiate with Maduro loyalists without appearing weak. Maduro loyalists cannot surrender without facing execution. In Cuba, regime cannot abandon Venezuela without losing credibility. In China, Xi cannot accept humiliation without damaging his political standing. Domestic political imperatives in each country prevent rational foreign policy. Leaders become prisoners of their own rhetoric. The path to resolution is unclear. Negotiations require mediators both sides trust. Nobody qualifies. Brazil tried. Both sides rejected Brazilian proposals. Mexico offered. Nobody accepted. United Nations is dismissed by everyone. The absence of trusted mediators means no negotiation process exists. Without negotiations, military stalemate continues indefinitely. Venezuela becomes another Syria, another Libya, another Yemen, frozen conflict that lasts years or decades. Humanitarian catastrophe that nobody can solve and nobody can ignore. The lessons being absorbed worldwide are concerning. China learns it cannot project power into Western Hemisphere. This humiliation will drive massive military expansion. Next time, they won't be caught unable to respond. Cuba learns military intervention has limits without superpower backing. Russia confirms view that America is aggressive hegemon, willing to use force over commercial interests. Small countries learn that hosting great power competitions is existential risk. The educational value of Venezuelan crisis is high. The tuition is paid in Venezuelan blood. Your engagement directly shapes what we cover next. Drop a comment and subscribe. The war nobody wanted reveals fundamental flaws in international system. No mechanism exists to prevent escalation once pride and interests collide. International law is invoked by everyone and followed by nobody. Economic interdependence didn't prevent conflict, it weaponized it. Alliance structures create obligations that drag countries into conflicts they don't care about. The liberal international order that was supposed to prevent wars is failing its basic test. Venezuela is burning, the hemisphere is destabilizing, great powers are confronting each other, and international institutions watch helplessly. The irony is that nobody achieved their objectives. America wanted regime change and oil security, got civil war and oil crisis. Venezuela wanted sovereignty and prosperity, got foreign intervention and economic collapse. Cuba wanted to preserve influence, got military quagmire draining resources. China wanted investment security, got worthless assets in war zone. Russia wanted geopolitical leverage, got diplomatic costs exceeding any benefit. Every player is worse off than before the crisis. Every player continues fighting because stopping means admitting failure. This is definition of collective irrationality. The civilians are the ultimate victims. They didn't want the coup. They didn't want the civil war. They didn't want the international intervention. They wanted jobs, food, medicine, and peace. Instead, they got combat in their streets, economic collapse, and refugee camps. The war was supposedly fought for their benefit. Democracy, development, sovereignty, freedom. Noble words. The reality is their cities burn while foreign powers pursue strategic interests. This is recurring tragedy of great power competition. The people who supposedly benefit suffer most, while outsiders compete for influence. If you made it this far, you're the core of our community. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell. The war nobody wanted is now the war nobody can stop. Too much blood spilled, too much money spent, too much pride invested. Both sides are trapped. America cannot withdraw without abandoning junta and losing oil access. Venezuela cannot surrender without losing sovereignty. Cuba cannot retreat without losing credibility. China cannot accept defeat without damaging Xi's position. Russia cannot abandon Venezuela without looking weak. Every party is locked into position they cannot maintain but cannot abandon. The endgame scenarios are all bad. Best case is frozen conflict lasting decades. Worst case is escalation to great power war. Most likely case is something in between. Long, grinding conflict, occasional flare-ups, persistent humanitarian crisis, regional instability, high oil prices, diplomatic paralysis. This is the new normal. The war nobody wanted becomes the war everybody lives with. Venezuela joins the list of frozen conflicts that define 21st century geopolitics. The suffering continues, the costs accumulate, the lessons are ignored, and the next crisis is already brewing somewhere else. The war nobody wanted teaches one lesson above all. International system is broken. The mechanisms designed to prevent conflicts don't work. The institutions meant to resolve disputes are powerless. The norms supposed to constrain behavior are ignored. Power matters more than principle. Pride trumps pragmatism. National interests override humanitarian concerns. This is not the world anyone wanted. But this is the world we have. Venezuela is the symptom. The disease is deeper. The international order is failing. The question isn't whether another crisis like Venezuela will happen. The question is where and when, and whether next time the escalation can be contained before someone uses the nuclear weapons everyone keeps mentioning. Nobody wanted this war. Everybody got it anyway. Welcome to 21st century great power competition, where rational actors create irrational outcomes, where limited interventions become unlimited disasters, where wars start over oil contracts and end with threats of nuclear annihilation, where the war nobody wanted becomes the war nobody can stop. This is USA versus Venezuela explained. The conflict that proves the international system is fundamentally broken, and the lesson that nobody will learn until it's too late.